Good afternoon, Namaskar. Finance Secretary Somanathanji, Controller General of Accounts Sonali Singh, Additional Controller Generals Shakuntalaji and Dharitri Panda, Special Secretary Annie Matthew, Capacity Building Commission's Chief, Secretaries, representatives from the banks, state governments officials, media. I'm extremely happy to be here. And first of all, let me have a word in appreciation for the two young people who are really running the show today here. Not to undermine the other, but one particular individual is very, for me, motivating, the young man who's all in Hindi. So I'm telling myself sometime during this entire little interaction that I'm doing with you, I should attempt to speak at least 2 lines without error in Hindi and not being self-conscious. But I really hold the two young people for very smoothly and gently conducting this whole meeting. These kind of opportunities given to young officers will always be memorable for them and also very motivating for the others. So I appreciate the department for having given that kind of a thought in having this meeting conducted by them. We are all aware that the Azadi Amrit Mahotsav started sometime in March last year, 2021, when the Prime Minister himself went to Dandi, participated in the Salt Satyagraha, which is remembering the original Salt Satyagraha which Mahatma Gandhi had undertaken. And from then, every week, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav is being celebrated by departments of government, where they are recalling 75 years of how any one particular department has served the people of India and how each department has evolved itself to keep in pace with the time and the need of the day. In that process, Ministry of Finance and Corporate Affairs started its celebration of this Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav from yesterday, when Honorable Prime Minister initiated this whole week for us. After which each department is going ahead with their own program. And in the morning today, we had the Corporate Affairs Ministry doing for their own activities, and they had a very elaborate picture and also a very elaborate narrative of how the department has evolved, how various agencies under it are functioning. Now, one small confession I'd like to make here. When we were all sitting and planning as to how this whole weekly program, 1 week's program, week-long program will have to be taken up, and how each department is going to plan up for their own narrative or for their own telling the story of how that department has grown in the last 75 years or contributed and how it evolved itself. I still have a lot of work to do with expenditure, but I'm still going to have to say this. Expenditure was very hesitant, saying, what is there for us to say, ma'am? That is very typical of expenditure. And I make it a point every time to draw out and say, no, expenditure, do something. This time too, the expenditure department felt we are here to make sure that money given is spent and we make a good account, and we are doing that steadfastly. And of course, you're steadfastly doing that. But shouldn't you want to participate and say how this department has moved from one to another, improving in the way in which public finance is being handled? No, it's very difficult to argue with the finance secretary. And you sort of tell after a point, oh no, I can't. He's the, he's the brain behind the whole ministry. I've got to maintain good relationship. Then it took a week long, again a second week, and so on. And you'll wonder how we had that much time. To be fair, it was in November that we were supposed to do this week-long celebration. And we had a very valid excuse to say, sorry, we can't do it in November because we are on the verge of preparing for the budget on February 1st. We have to do it. So please give us some other time. So June was given to us. So all these arguments have been taking place over the months. Then came, was it March? There are three, was it in March that we, in the very same auditorium, the single nodal account and everything else was done. So we went back and said, now please, you don't have any excuse because this is a singular contribution, singular achievement, singular responsible way in which you have shown the lead in being answerable for public money, in making sure money just in time reaches who needs it, the state governments. And if you've done this in a very transparent way because you have used technology, and repeatedly all these presentations told us how you will know where the money is and who's released it and who's not released it, and if it's lying somewhere, why is it lying there? It's all there for everybody to see it. So can there be a better contribution to governance than this, where not just the center, the states can see it, the state and the unit below it in a three-tier democracy, elected panchayat tak democracy. What better way to be sure that you are being fair, open, accountable and transparent than this? So after that, it was fairly easy for me to convince the finance secretary, saying you should at least come out publicly and say this is what your contribution is. And in the 75 years you have done at various levels using various different methods, but this is a milestone and you should talk about it. And therefore today's celebration is possible. So it's difficult when you're asking for money from expenditure secretary, but it's difficult even to say about what you're doing because they have their own perspective. No, we are here to really serve, nothing more. But tell out. Unless you speak out, even the state governments will not know what power this has. You're able to say that you're doing your job in a fair way. In the federal system, that's what you want. And it is that which gives you the strength. I first of all thank expenditure for having spent all its time, people like Annie, people like Dharitri, Sonali, Shakuntala, and many others are singularly contributing to improving systems. Each one of you all have attributed your time for it, and this kind of an achievement for a complex governance country like India. If it's possible here, it is possible in very many other countries as well, like the way it is Aadhaar, like the way it is the CoWIN app, like the way we have come up with the payment systems, UPI. This for governance is the UPI. You've made every payment easy. You've made every payment in a jiffy. It can happen like that. And therefore, I think 75 years, in the 75th year, for Department of Expenditure to have come up with this kind of a system and a dashboard which we've come up with is absolutely creditworthy, and it is important to recognize this. So we are talking about one or two or three things all happening in these last 3 years. To this comes the additional work which expenditure voluntarily has joined Mission Karma Yogi to do. And that is, when the Capacity Building Commission looks at training modules, based on that distinctly memorable meeting which Honorable PM had with all the administrative service officers, to see how best bureaucracy can be made a lot more nimble, lot more efficient, lot more empowered, because you're trained enough to do and adapt to different situations. So the Mission Karma Yogi tasked the Capacity Building Commission to come up with a training module, which was very well explained. It is so built that you grade yourself one after the other and move from one module to a better module, higher module. You cannot just, skip a module, or you cannot say, I've finished a module without actually really having finished it. So it has been very well tailored. Capacity Building Commission has really taken this opportunity, and again, expenditure voluntarily went into having this, because it gives them the opportunity to have their officers better trained. So again, kudos to expenditure for having readily come up to join into this and having access to the Capacity Building Commission to get this sorted out. So Mission Karma Yogi's one objective of empowering, training, skilling bureaucracy is very well served, and I'm very happy to say, first being through expenditure, first being through Ministry of Finance. So that is a good cooperative relationship between Ministry of Finance and the Capacity Building Commission. And this being marked on the 75th year of independence is something which I'm very happy to be associated with. It is a very positive step. I also appreciate 3 states, if I remember and recall right, Arunachal Pradesh, Bihar, and one more state which has readily come forward to do the pilot testing and also agree to have it trained. Did you say the 3 states? Odisha, Bihar, and no, Arunachal Pradesh, Bihar, and one other state was mentioned, saying they've come forward for the training. And I would actually, through this address, request every other state also to go through that, because it just gives you a refreshing approach to what is being available in this module. This is going to only improve the performance of civil servants. I'm glad today's meeting's format in explaining how this single nodal account and also how the TSA functions. We have brought in the banks and other stakeholders. We have also brought in the states. This is a very important aspect, because it's one thing for expenditure of Finance Ministry to come up with a fascinating way of sending money, tracking the money flow, and seeing where it goes, when it goes. But when you have other agencies which are instrumental in making it successful, also coming here and saying, this is how I'm doing it. For instance, for Canara Bank to come here and speak about it. For instance, state government Odisha to come here to speak about it. Just gives a complete reassurance that something which you have designed, something which you have tailored, and something about which expenditure can be sure that it is a very purpose-serving tool or instrument. You have also the states and also the other stakeholder, the banks, explaining it. It proves that all stakeholders seem to see the purpose similarly, and therefore it definitely serves the objective. And therefore bringing the bank or the states here gives a greater sense of reassurance that what you're doing is actually aiming at serving and serving better. I don't want to get into the details of how much is being transferred from center through the centrally sponsored schemes. Somewhere, if I track from some other conversation, about 4,46,000 crores go through the centrally sponsored schemes. And this is not at all a small amount. And if today you are in a position to track that money in a year moving to the states, and from states further down to the district, from district further down to the village level, it is a huge success in making governance transparent. If that quantum of money is also equally sent just in time. I hope that just in time idea actually gets ignited in all our minds. You're not delaying the money, you're not giving it in advance, you're not telling them hold on. It just is possible to reach in time. What better value realization for every rupee sent? That is, I think, the core message if you're dealing with public finance. I'm sure it is the core message when you deal with your own money. But just in time is the magic three words which serve the purpose of explaining what single nodal account can do. And I think in this day and age, using technology, open and transparent way of just in time reaching is the story of today. And that is what I want to appreciate for the contribution that Department of Expenditure has contributed in getting this out. But I get very excited when I understand these sort of things, in the way in which too many jugglery of words happen, because people like you all who are in the trade, in the business, who are also doing this will certainly understand it. But today, I know Finance Secretary has already taken the name of the official, but I'm also compelled to take the name of the same official, Sajjan Yadav, for having written about it this morning. I want to tell you all, I honestly want to tell you, for people like me to speak about it like this, I take a while to get the briefing, understand, and also hands-on see through some people that this is how it's going to work. But people like you who are the officials who are executing this at the state level or at the national level or at the district level, if you in the local languages write about what this is nothing that anyone is restricting the money which are due to be reaching different beneficiary and different beneficiaries through the various schemes. If it can be so efficient, and if it is actually bringing the total value realization for, there were days when you wondered where that 1 rupee went, or when 1 rupee 16 paisa only ultimately goes to the beneficiary and so on. Here is a way in which you're explaining how that money is reaching in time for the program for which it is meant, and post which it touches the beneficiary. I was very impressed about this piece which was written by Sajjan Yadav this morning in the newspaper. Similarly, I request officers from the states in your respective languages, or people here, must frequently write about these sort of things so that governance becomes interesting even for common people. And there are times when after the budget people have asked me questions about, you come out with so many different documents. Only one is really useful. I was just sitting next to the Finance Secretary, saying this actually gives one side of the story of the outcome budget. You through the year know what is going, where is it going, which money reached where. The other is, which is what Finance Secretary highlighted to me, in the outcome budget you will know how many lengths of roads were finished, how many beneficiaries got this, or which check dam was built with that money, and so on. So really, one side of the coin through the year is now happening and there for all of us to see. The other side is what is going to get tied up when the outcome budget is printed out every year. So if there is greater and greater move towards transparency, greater and greater move towards being open about what is happening, I think all of us feel lots more empowered. And therefore, without getting into more details, I appreciate every one of you who have really contributed to this major step in public finance, and also the Capacity Building Commission for having worked together with the ministry in getting the materials for the training prepared. I honestly request every officer to use this opportunity and go through the training module, because it's going to be absolutely necessary. It is online. It is something which you can do from anywhere. You don't need to be spared from your work. So IGOT is the name, and I thought it was a very nice acronym, because it is Government online training. Integrated, is it? That I is integrated, but it is so small. The I is so small. Was it for just the design? So it's integrated government online training, right? You can do it from anywhere, do it, and you will feel a lot more empowered. So thank you for all the efforts and thank you for being here today. But Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav can only be with each one of you all contributing to it. And we look forward to great enterprising and enthusiastic and motivating Amrit Kal. So that when in 2047 we talk about India, you know who are all making the difference. Each one of you all are making the difference. Jai Hind.